Why the first $100,000 feels impossible but changes everything. There's a point in almost everyone's financial life where progress feels invisible. You're working, you're saving, you're trying to be responsible, and yet when you look at the numbers, it feels like you're crawling. A few thousand saved, maybe 5, maybe 10, and the idea of reaching $100,000 feels almost fictional. Let's slow this down. The first $100,000 feels impossible not because you're incapable, but because the system you're operating in makes early progress brutally slow. And most people quit emotionally before the math has a chance to start working for them. If you've ever felt that frustration, that sense that you're doing the right things but not moving fast enough, stay with me. And if this kind of calm, honest breakdown helps you think more clearly about money, press like so more people find this conversation. These early stages are where most financial journeys quietly stall. Now, here's the part no one explains clearly. The first $100,000 is almost entirely built from effort, not growth, effort. When you have $5,000 invested and the market returns 8%, that's $400 in a year. Helpful, but not life-changing. When you have $20,000 invested at 8%, that's $1,600. Still modest relative to your income. In the beginning, the growth component is small, so nearly all progress depends on what you can save from your paycheck. And saving from your paycheck requires margin. Margin requires discipline. And discipline, when the results are slow, feels unrewarding. This is where most people misinterpret the experience. They assume something is wrong because it feels hard, but it's supposed to feel hard. Compounding is powerful, but only after the base becomes meaningful. At $100,000 invested, an 8% return is $8,000 in a year. That's not abstract anymore. That's visible. That's noticeable. That begins to feel like momentum. And here's where the shift happens. Before $100,000, you are pushing the snowball uphill. After $100,000, the snowball starts helping you push. That doesn't mean it's easy. It means the math begins contributing in a way it couldn't before. But let's go deeper than motivation. Why does the first $100,000 feel so psychologically heavy? Because in the early stage of building wealth, you are fighting three forces at the same time. You're fighting consumption, you're fighting debt, and you're fighting lifestyle inflation. When your income rises, your environment encourages you to upgrade. A better apartment, a newer car, a nicer neighborhood. None of these are irrational, but each one competes directly with your ability to accumulate capital. And capital accumulation, especially early on, requires restraint that rarely gets celebrated. The system is built to reward visible spending. It's not built to reward invisible investing. So you can feel behind even when you're ahead of most people. Let's talk about housing for a moment. If a large percentage of your income goes toward housing, mortgage, or rent, the timeline to $100,000 stretches significantly, not because you're irresponsible, but because fixed costs crowd out investable cash flow. This is why two people earning the same income can hit $100,000 years apart. One keeps fixed expenses modest and invests consistently. The other stretches for lifestyle and invests inconsistently. The difference compounds. This isn't about judgment, it's about structure. The first $100,000 is built on structure more than anything else. It's built on creating a gap between what you earn and what you spend, and protecting that gap long enough for it to accumulate. And here's the uncomfortable part. The gap often looks boring. Driving a reliable but unimpressive car, living in a space slightly below what you could technically afford, saying no to upgrades when your income increases. None of that feels exciting. It feels patient. Patience is an underpriced financial skill. Now let's look at the math clearly. If you invest $1,000 a month, it takes roughly 8 years to reach $100,000, assuming reasonable returns. 8 years can feel like a long time when you're at year 1, but if you stop at year 3 because progress feels slow, you reset the clock. Momentum requires consistency more than intensity. This is why chasing high-risk shortcuts often backfires. When people feel the weight of slow progress, they look for acceleration. Speculative investments, timing the market,
concentrated bets. Sometimes those work. Often they don't. And when they don't, the timeline stretches even further. The irony is that the first $100,000 is less about finding the perfect investment and more about building the habit of regular investing. It's behavioral, not tactical. Let's talk about what changes after $100,000. First, volatility feels different. A 10% market swing on $5,000 is $500. On $100,000, it's $10,000. That sounds scarier, but here's what's interesting. The growth in good years also becomes meaningful. Gains can exceed your annual contributions. That's the moment you realize your money is working. Second, your confidence shifts. You stop wondering whether wealth building works and start seeing evidence that it does. That psychological shift changes how you view spending decisions. Impulse purchases feel more expensive because you understand opportunity cost more clearly. Third, time becomes your ally. At $100,000, if you never contributed another dollar and earned 8% annually, in 20 years, that could grow to over $450,000. That's without additional effort, just time. Time only works like that once the base is meaningful. That's why the first $100,000 changes everything. It transforms compounding from theory into reality. But I want to be careful here. This isn't about worshiping a number. It's about understanding thresholds. The first $10,000 builds proof of discipline. The first $50,000 builds proof of consistency. The first $100,000 builds proof of compounding. Each stage feels different. And if you're somewhere between $0 and $100,000 right now, it's important to know that frustration is not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're in the hardest phase. You're carrying most of the weight yourself. If this conversation is helping you recalibrate how you see early investing, subscribe. That's what this channel is about. Slowing down big financial ideas so you can make better long-term decisions without panic. Let's go deeper into why people stall before $100,000. Lifestyle expansion is the quiet killer of early wealth. When income increases, most people increase fixed expenses. Fixed expenses are dangerous because they don't adjust downward easily. A higher rent payment doesn't disappear if your bonus shrinks. A larger mortgage doesn't shrink if your industry slows down. And when fixed costs rise, the gap required for investing narrows. The math becomes unforgiving. Many high-income earners struggle to reach $100,000, not because they lack income, but because their lifestyle absorbed it before capital could. Again, not judgment, just trade-offs. Every dollar that builds lifestyle today is a dollar that doesn't build compounding tomorrow. And compounding tomorrow is what eventually buys freedom. There's also timing risk. If you start investing during a market downturn, your early years may show little visible growth. That can feel discouraging, but those early contributions, purchased at lower prices, often become some of the most powerful compounding assets later. The problem is you don't know that in the moment. You just see flat performance. This is where emotional discipline matters more than financial intelligence. You don't need brilliance to reach $100,000. You need endurance. Endurance through boredom. Endurance through long years. Endurance through comparing yourself to people who appear further ahead. And let's talk about comparison. Social media showcases exits, windfalls, overnight success. It does not showcase 8 years of steady monthly investing. So your quiet progress can feel invisible. But invisibility doesn't mean insignificance. Now let me say something clearly. The goal isn't to hoard money at the expense of living. The goal is to reach escape velocity. Escape velocity is the point where your invested assets begin growing in ways that meaningfully supplement your effort. That's what $100,000 represents for many people. It's the shift from pushing alone to being pushed forward. If you're under that number right now, your job isn't to get discouraged. Your job is to protect the gap. Protect the difference between what you earn and what you spend. Protect it from upgrades. Protect it from impulse. Protect it from the belief that slow means broken. And if this video resonates, if you're in that early stage and it feels heavier than anyone warned you about, share it with someone else building quietly. Most people underestimate how hard the first stage is. Let's close with perspective. The The first $100,000 feels impossible because in the beginning the results lag the effort. You're planting seeds and staring at soil, but underground roots are forming. When the base reaches critical mass, growth becomes visible. That's when things accelerate. That's when discipline turns into momentum. That's when money starts participating in the process. Until then, it will feel like you're doing most of the work. And that's normal. You're not behind, you're early. And early always feels slow. Stay steady, protect the gap. Let time work once you've built enough for it to matter. Because the first $100,000 doesn't just change your net worth, it changes how the math behaves. And once the math starts helping you, everything feels different.